please stand for the pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Call the roll, please.
Mr. Mitchell,
Here.
Mr. Taylor,
Present.
Ms. Rush here, Ms. Crowder,
Yes.
Ms. Buchanan,
Present.
Mr. Bradley, no, Ms. Watley Seeds.
Present.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. Item one, approval of minutes from special meeting July 13th, 2019. Have a motion, please.
President Mitchell, I'd like to make a motion for the approval of minutes from the special meeting, July 13, 2019.
Seconded by Ms. Buchanan. Call the roll, please.
Mr. Mitchell,
Yes.
Mr. Taylor,
Yes.
Ms. Rush, yes, Ms. Crowder,
Yes.
Ms. Buchanan,
Yes.
Mr. Bradley, Ms. Watley Seeds.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Tonight, we have changed the,
Agenda.
did we approve the agenda?
No, you skipped that one.
Okay. Have a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Support.
It's been moved and supported. Call the roll, please.
Mr. Mitchell,
Yes.
Mr. Taylor,
Yes.
Ms. Rush, yes, Ms. Crowder,
Yes.
Ms. Buchanan,
Yes.
Mr. Bradley, no, Ms. Watley Seeds.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Usually on the agenda, we have public comments prior to moving on in the agenda, but we have moved it down to item 3 after the district response to the governor's plan is given. That way, the community members and/or public that is in the office will have an opportunity to respond to the plan afterwards, after you hear it. And then you'll be able to have your 3-minute comments. If after your 3 minutes, you still have items that you'd like to discuss or get answers for, please email the superintendent, and she will further expound on whatever questions you may have. As you know, the history and the background of why we're here today, the governor's office presented us with a plan that included some items that the district and the community responded to as not being of value to the school district. So the Board of Education, hearing from the community and the students, responded likewise, and we voted 6-0 to reject her plan. Shortly after that, I think the following week, we had a surprise visit from the governor and her staff regarding where would we go next. And so we were given the opportunity to present our version of what we thought we could accomplish, not only in the 1-year time frame that she had given us, but in the 3 to 4 year time frame that we were already under law with MDE and Treasury under the cooperative agreement. So we felt that to accomplish the benchmarks that we needed to move this district forward, we certainly could not do it within a year. And so our plan tonight will address that. And I'm going to ask the superintendent, Mr. Taylor, and our attorney, Mr. Martin, to walk us through the plan. And at that time, we will ask for public comments afterwards. Ms. Robinson.
Thank you, President Mitchell. So what we'll do, we'll have our attorney kind of give a big overview, and then Mr. Taylor and myself, we will jump in and give information around some of the details of the plan.
Okay, should we put it on the screen?
Sue's going to pull it up.
We can move around if you can. I can
So the first page of the plan talks about the background, basically gives a quick historical overview, acknowledges the fact that for about the last 5 years, the state has been involved in various agreements with the school district, including the consent agreement with Treasury, a partnership agreement with the Michigan Department of Education, and a cooperative agreement with the Michigan Department of Education through the State School Reform Officer School District. It also acknowledges that in December of 2018, the state legislature enacted Public Act 601 of 2018, which repealed Section 1280C of the revised school code effective June 30th, 2019. By doing that, they essentially eliminated the office of the school reform officer, with whom we had a 5-year agreement with 4 years remaining. So the second page then goes into our proposed plan, which is essentially to propose the continuation, if you will, of the cooperative agreement, or the establishment of some similar agreement with a period not to be less than 4 years. As a matter of fundamental fairness, we had a 4-year agreement remaining with the Michigan Department of Education, and we feel that it would not be fair and perhaps a violation of the state and federal constitutions for the legislature to impair that agreement with the district. Therefore, we would want not less than a 4-year agreement. In doing that, the district is proposing certain types of things to be included in the agreement, including the general local control. The district would have full local control and would operate the school district in its entirety, kindergarten through 12th grade. The proposal on the plan acknowledges the fact that the threats to shut down the high school within a year have had the adverse impact of parents basically enrolling their students in other districts already. We're already struggling with the fact that our enrollment is down, which hurts us from a funding standpoint because each student brings with them approximately $8,000. As the board has previously indicated, on an annual basis, the district has been losing between $16 to $22 million based on students who live within Benton Harbor area school boundaries but do not attend the schools. So that first bullet point on that second page indicates that the agreement must provide that the state and the board are committed to keeping Benton Harbor High School open for a minimum of 4 years, and that if the district meets its annual benchmarks, the 12-month, 24, 36, and 38 benchmarks that we'll talk about later, then that 4-year commitment will automatically roll over, so that anybody who enrolls in Benton Harbor as a freshman knows that they can graduate as a Tiger. Otherwise, we would be losing students again. Next, the school district, as the board, would have full control over the district's property, including approval and sale of lease. The district board would be responsible to ensure compliance with the revised school code. The board would continue to work closely with the Department of Treasury to actively monitor and address the financial position of the district and to comply with any enhanced debt elimination plans. The board would also work closely with MDE to address student achievement performance each and every school year. And then we would agree to utilize the services of an independent third-party consultant who would be mutually agreeable to all parties and who has experience with effectively turning around urban school districts. The board leadership and accountability, the board would hire a superintendent who's highly qualified and meets all the requirements in the revised school code. The board would hire a chief financial officer or finance director who's highly qualified and meets all the requirements in the revised school code and the State Aid Act. The board would also ensure that all building administrators are highly qualified and meet the requirements for the administrative positions that they're hired. And then the board members themselves would receive leadership training from the Michigan Association of School Boards, which would be paid for by grant funding, philanthropic funding, or in-kind donations. The next section talks about academic and student performance as a general overview. The district will continue to implement a consistent evidence-based curriculum across K-12, and that would include professional development for our instructional staff. The costs associated with the professional development would be paid for by grant funding, philanthropic funding, or other in-kind donations. The district would continue to work to increase the number of certified teachers, And we would acknowledge in the agreement, both parties should acknowledge that is affected by certain factors, including a national teacher shortage, specifically in the areas of math, science, and special ed, the state of Michigan trends, and the instability of the district and the impact that has on the district's ability to provide competitive wages. Then additional funding provided by the state that would enable the district to recruit and retain certified staff, given that third bullet point. As possible budget straits allow, the district would seek to increase the compensation package. But again, that's dependent upon the district's financial situation. The district would continue to work to decrease the percentage of long-term subs. The district would continue to implement appropriate teacher evaluation system and administrator evaluation system, both of which that would comply with the revised school code. The district would work to increase student achievement based on both student growth and proficiency. The district would continue to ensure that all instructional staff and administrators would be trained in the use of restorative practices, and that training again would be paid for by grant funds, philanthropic funds, or in-kind donations. That the district would work to decrease the percentage of students who are subjected to suspensions or expulsions. We would seek to decrease the number of students who are deemed truant, and we would work to resolve any outstanding special education discipline issues that existed at the end of the 2018-19 school year, and any other compliance issues related to special ed. The next section goes over generally financial accountability, where we would adopt, implement, and maintain a sound financial and operating plan for the district, an annual balanced budget that complies with the revised school code, the Uniform Budgeting and Accounting Act, and all other applicable laws, that will submit an enhanced deficit elimination plan if the treasurer requires one to be submitted, and that we would enter into a recovery agreement with the state if deemed necessary by the state. That we would allow the appointment of a local auditor. The cost of the local auditor would be paid for by state funding, grant funding, philanthropic funding, or in-kind donations. That we will continue to work closely with the Department of Treasury. That we will work to reduce the percentage of our budget that's used for non-instructional expenditures. And again, that's one of the reasons why you're seeing a lot of these things being paid for by grant funding, state funding, philanthropic, or in-kind donations, so that we're not spending money elsewhere. That we would continue as a board to proceed with and plan for sales of real estate of our vacant properties as the board determines appropriate. That we would establish a 5-year plan for the use of our sinking funds. That we would engage in significant student recruitment efforts. That we would that state officials would assist the district with applying for and getting any available grant funding. The next section deals with benchmarks that cover the next 4 years, a 12-month benchmark, 24-month benchmark, 36, and 48. The first section deals with state academic performance, and each of these are dealing with student growth in reading and math. Then when you see the next one with the PSAT and SAT and the MSTEPs, the bottom 4, those are dealing with student proficiency. The goal is to get students to become proficient. There are academic experts out there who question the use of standardized testing. Standardized test scores are predominantly impacted by poverty, and we know that we're a high poverty district. So treating students here in Benton Harbor as compared to more affluent districts is not really comparing apples to apples, so to speak. So we're looking at large growth in the first 2, as well as proficiency in the bottom 4. The next section deals with student well-being and positive behaviors. It's looking to decrease the number of suspensions, expulsions, and truancy over the course of the next 4 years. And you'll see gradual decreases from the current school year over the course of those 4 years becoming more prominent. The next section deals with professional staffing. Again, it's acknowledging those 4 trends that I mentioned before: a national teacher shortage, the state of Michigan trends, the instability of the district, and the ability or inability to provide competitive wages. The first section deals with retaining certified staff who do not include retirees, with the idea that we want to, by the 4th year, retain 75% of our staff from year to year. The second section deals with adding additional certified teachers, starting off with 10% in the first year and working our way to 60% by the end of the fourth year. The third section deals with recruiting and retaining long-term subs who are enrolled in credentialed or certification programs. This is something that we are committed to starting, wanting to have 10% to begin with, and by the fourth year of those long-term subs that we use, 60% of them will be enrolled in such a program. We are also looking to require those long-term subs to attend the sub-academy, and this is a higher percentage, starting with 20% and getting to 90% in year 4. Then we're also looking to improve the school leaders' knowledge and ability to monitor and provide feedback. The next section is dealing with benchmarks to ensure that all staff have opportunity for leadership roles within the district. And these are based on self-assessment surveys. The next is, again, improving the knowledge and ability of school leaders to plan, allocate resources, and implement the resources to support teaching and learning. And again, you see increases over the course of those 4 years. The next section deals with what steps the board would be committed to taking in order to meet those benchmarks and goals. Again, the first step is to enter into a multi-year with a minimum of 4 years. Not to say it could be more, but again, we believe as a matter of fundamental fairness that 4 years should be the minimum. That would be approved by the Michigan Department of Treasury and the Michigan Department of Education. Board members will be trained by the Michigan Association of School Boards. You would abide by the school board approved norms and protocols as facilitated by the MASB during all meetings and during all interactions outside of meetings. That you would create a professional development plan for board members. That you would ensure that the protocols adopted by the board are aligned to approved school board policy. That you would abide by all existing policies. That you will align your board meeting agendas to the major responsibilities that you have. That you create a timeline as a board with proper assistance, whether from Neola or MASB, to update your policies, that you would revise any existing policies according to the timeline that you determine, that you would include goals and benchmarks as part of your superintendent's evaluation, that you would create and approve a school board policy that outlines a code of conduct for school board members, that you would formalize, publish, and implement a research-based Board of Education evaluation process, the superintendent evaluation process, that you would explore shared services with neighboring school districts, intermediate school districts, in consultation with Treasury or MDE, and maximize the use of your district resources to implement your goals. That you would also explore collaborative partnerships with state colleges and universities to address teacher certification, mentoring, student mentoring, and other potential partnerships. And that you would also collaborate with the local faith-based community to address similar types of things, including mentoring relationships, homeless services, and other potential partnerships, and that you would continue to explore collaborative partnerships with other community organizations to provide various wraparound services with students. That's one of the things that educational experts find is very helpful to assist students, especially those living in high poverty areas, with their academic achievement. The next section deals with superintendent actions, and Trish, if you want to address those.
Yes. So the superintendent will work with any MDE liaison to ensure the successful implementation of the proposed agreement. The superintendent will also coordinate regular check-ins with partners to establish progress on proposed agreement or mutually agreed upon dates and times. The superintendent will also lead the district leaders and school leaders in the actual implementation of the proposed agreement. The superintendent will also communicate the proposed agreement goals and student achievement targets to school board members, leaders, staff, and community throughout the year, the life of the agreement, which includes, but is not limited to, at least a monthly update at a regularly scheduled school board meeting. The superintendent will also serve as chief overseer of the proposed agreement. The superintendent will direct, supervise, and be accountable for the strategies and interventions included for academic instructional progress in the proposed agreement. The included for student well-being and positive student behavior in the proposed agreement. The superintendent will monitor and adjust interventions and strategies based on frequent review of student academic and behavioral data. The superintendent will also seek to recruit certified teachers, the evaluation system for teachers and administrators to ensure progress toward highly and district staff to employ qualified and certified staff needed to implement strategies and interventions of the proposed agreement and the operation of Ben Harbor area schools and the district. The superintendent will participate in professional learning and networking opportunities offered throughout the state of Michigan to gather ideas for the successful implementation of the proposed agreement. The superintendent will plan to open or reopen one or more magnet schools within the district for the 2020-2021 school year.
So the next section deals with MDE actions that would be taken to help the district meet its benchmarks and goals. MDE would appoint a liaison who would serve as the primary point of contact between MDE and the district. That MDE and the liaison would work with the superintendent and the district staff to ensure the successful implementation of the agreement. MDE would garner additional support from key personnel and offices within MDE, as well as other partners and state agencies to help the district reach our goals. The MDE would identify barriers to the proposed agreement, work collaboratively with the superintendent to eliminate or minimize those. MDE facilitate discussions and meetings related to the agreement. MDE participate in regular check-ins, not less than a quarterly basis. The MDE would provide technical assistance to support the implementation of the agreement goals and benchmarks. That the liaison would attend district school board meetings to collaboratively present with the superintendent on updates. That MDE would provide opportunities for support and resources to the district to help implement the agreement, subject to the availability of funds. And that MDE will assist and ensure that the district receives any available regional assistant grant funds, any available technical assistance grant funds, and any other grant funds that might be available, including but limited to partnership district agreement grant funds under Section 21H of the State School Aid Act. Then we have some accountability measures to say what might happen if the district fails to meet benchmarks. These are similar to what was in the partnership agreement that the district was in MDE with prior to the cooperative agreement. The first is if you fail to meet the 24-month benchmarks, the MDE may impose mutually agreed upon measures, which would include the state superintendent of public instruction consulting with the state treasurer to determine whether or not a failure to meet the benchmark constitutes a breach of the agreement, and that the district can show evidence toward the 24th benchmarks that we're making progress, even though all of them are not met, that the district representatives, MDE, and Treasury would meet to debrief the successes that we've had and opportunities for growth regarding the implementation of the agreement, to determine what would be necessary to meet the 36-month benchmark, along with who would be responsible and accountable for those actions. If we don't meet the 24-month benchmarks, we would consider drastic teacher and administrator reconfiguration, placing the strongest teachers based on their evaluations in the schools with the greatest academic need, and giving compulsory training to those teachers who are reassigned due to their poor student outcomes. If MDE decides that we are not making reasonable progress toward our goals and benchmarks, the state superintendent, MDE liaison, and the district leadership will consider what additional supports are needed to meet the 36-month goal benchmarks. And we may determine that mediation is necessary if either party requests it. If we fail to meet the 36-month benchmarks, MDE may impose mutually agreed upon measures, which again includes looking and consulting with the treasurer to determine whether or not the failure to meet the benchmark is a violation of the agreement, looking at whether or not we have evidence of growth and increases toward the benchmark, even though not all of them are met, which then will allow us to meet and discuss what actions would be necessary to meet the 4-year benchmark goals, along with who would be accountable. And if the agreement is extended, any subsequent actions of who is responsible and accountable for those actions. If we fail to meet the 36-month benchmarks, again, we're considering a drastic teacher and administrator reconfiguration. If MDE determines we're not making reasonable progress, they will consider what is going to be needed to meet the 38-month goal. And If either party requests mediation, allowing for mediation. If MDE determines we're not making reasonable progress, then the state superintendent will be able to assign a CEO to the district as identified in the agreement. Then finally, if we don't meet the 48th benchmarks and goals, MDE may impose certain measures, including consulting with the state treasurer again. If we have evidence of growth, whether or not there are things that we can do to meet benchmarks in the future, or ultimately meeting with the state superintendent to consider whether or not the schools would need to be closed. The final portion covers the financial accountability and the debt elimination plan. Basically, based upon the figures that we had at the time, which was compiled by the state-appointed CEO, the budget is positive by $3,240. Some of those are one-time funds associated with property sales. We need to get what that is finalized based at the end of the year. But some of those are also attributed to the long-term debt, which in the last year was $1,146,113. Based upon that financial data, again, realize that going into our next school year, our budget is positive, meaning balanced, with an overview of an additional $22,198, excuse me. Again, we'll have to break out what those are associated with the one-time funds associated with the sale of our properties in order to determine how that would impact us going forward in the following year. The next section deals with what the district's long-term debt consists of. And then the next bullet point indicates that the district, based on the interest, has approximately $500,000 that we are dealing with on combined principal and interest for those obligations. And it shows it what it would be in the following fiscal year 2020, 2021. The general state aid fund of the district based on the deficit, and then what our state aid note is. We don't have the figure yet of the proposed state aid or tax anticipation notes, but those will be put in. It is my understanding that the financial firm Baird is handling that for the district, not our firm. So then the debt elimination proposal, what the plan calls for is basically having the state and the district equally share the costs involved in eliminating the approximate $17 million out there. The district's contribution would be based on voter approval, likely in March of 2020, of a bond issue for the debt elimination in the amount of approximately $8.5 million. If that were approved by voters, the bond proceeds would be used to offset the general fund deficit of approximately $4.4 million. The state's contribution would be to provide a total contribution in excess of the funding already anticipated for the district in the amount of $8.5 million, payable in 3 installments. The special appropriation would be used to rewrite the entire 2002 bonds, 2007 bonds, and the 2015-16, 2016-17 ELNs. The state's first contribution will be paid as part of the district's 2019-20 state school aid, with the first contribution being $3 million that would be received by the district not later than November 1st, 2019, to permit the timely payment of the debt service. The second contribution portion would be in the amount of $3 million, would be payable then not later than November 1, 2020, and payable provided that the district achieves the 12-month benchmarks set forth above, and provided that the electors of the district approve the issuance of the debt elimination bonds. Then the third and final contribution in the amount of $2.5 million would be paid on or before November 1st, 2021, and would be payable provided that the district achieves the 24-month benchmarks and provided that the electors approve the debt elimination bonds. We believe that this plan would allow the district to realize a substantial portion of benefit by allowing a portion of that money to be put forth in terms of hiring certified full-time teachers, which would allow us to replace the current long-term substitutes. We realize that will have a great impact on students' educational achievement. It was one of the things that the governor wanted us to do, and we believe that this funding would help us to do that. We also believe that if we meet our benchmarks, that the same thing would happen in the following years and allow the district to hire additional teachers and work towards getting a compensation package that is commensurate with the Bering-RISA average, which again was something that the governor's office said that we needed to do within year one, but didn't specifically say how it would be financially viable. And then notably, our current deficit elimination plan contemplates long-term debt remaining in place. Under that plan, we're spending quite a bit of money on handling the debt, and it creates a fund balance deficit. By addressing the long-term debt described above, we are equipped to raise the educational standards of our district noted elsewhere. And that will allow the district to stabilize in year one and then seek improvement as we move forward. So that is a very detailed overview of the plan. If there are questions, Mr. Taylor, Trish, and I can respond to those.
I would ask the audience as well if they have questions. And the attorney mentioned a bond. Would you tell our taxpayers in that financial section the amount, meaning meals, that it would put on a taxpayer's?
The millage amount that we've discussed would be 1 mil, meaning that my recollection is it's basically $100 on a $100,000 house on an annual basis. That's the equivalent of 1 mil. So somebody who has a $50,000 house would pay $50 on that tax.
And that's on the assessed value of the home, okay?
Thank you.
So we wanted to just make sure. Any questions from the audience?
Well, Joe, before we get to the comments, I'd just like to say that this is an ambitious plan that we've written, plan to send, and it's going to take all of us, teachers teaching, students learning, and parents involved in order for us to accomplish the benchmarks that we have established and said that we would do. It's not unsurmountable, but education has to be about education from here on out. So just a word to parents and students that when the school year starts, you come to school to learn. And all of the other stuff, that's not going to be tolerated anymore. Students that misbehave, they will be removed from this educational setting and placed in an alternative setting. We want to get back to being a school district where kids learn. Mm-hmm. And if you come for any other reason, the superintendent has the authority of this Board of Education to do what's necessary to make sure that all children have the opportunity to learn and succeed and have some fun along the way. With that, we have roll call for questions.
When we talk about debt, I was wondering, because I know that you all have requested an audit to find out about the 18 million or the 17 million which you spoke on that we're in debt of, to find out if each variable, if each dollar was brought and given account. And I was when I don't see about an audit. And then you talk about the state treasurer and the plan that they were offering you, but she said she would take away $11 million of the debt. Was that plan a feasible plan, or was that plan a plan just like the partnership agreement where you talked about the benchmark? The partnership agreement that they had, the benchmark couldn't be met in the first partnership agreement. And so I'm wondering what benchmarks are we having now that are in this agreement that would have to be met over a 24-month period, a 38-month period, are they the same benchmark that was unacceptable and could be reached that set us up for failure?
No, they're not. They're, I think, I'm gonna let interim superintendent speak on the benchmarks. You mentioned that 10 to 11.1 million dollars that the treasurer, that they offered,
They
right?
had offered, if you would have accepted their plan, they were saying that they would have took away $11 million.
So they won't do that now. So here's what they said. The legislation said, if you accept that plan, we'll take away that $11.1 million and close your high school. We said, we're not gonna accept that plan. The state legislation says, here's what we're gonna do then. Then you're not getting any money because the money is only for that 1-year plan. And so that's why we had to think of other financial avenues, because legislation, which is a Republican legislation, by the way, says that they're not gonna give up that money.
And with that thought, what I'm saying, if we were to do an audit and find out where those funds was misappropriated, I'm quite sure we will find out that the people that were brought in by the state, under the CEO and various other individuals that had nothing to do with this board, to find out where that money was at. Now, that would only be fair play to find out where the money was, who was given to, and what did they bring to the table for the money that they received. That's all I mean.
Right, no, I think in the plan, we do call for an audit. And if you think about this, our emergency loans, right, is 11.1 million.
And who owes the loan? The Chemical Bank?
So the state, so the emergency loans are through the state, through a different bank, right? And so 11.1 million of the 17 million, the 16 million, or the 18, because they keep throwing out 3 different numbers, right? We know 11.1 million is emergency loans. We know that we had a lawsuit with Sedesco, I think it was 2.2 or 2.5 mil. So if you add that, now you're up to 13 something million, right? And then some other things with long and short-term debt. So I'll turn it back over to Mrs. Robinson to answer the educational questions you talked about through the partnership agreement and how we meet these benchmarks and how they set us up for failure last time.
Okay, when we talk about a superintendent, is the superintendent going to have a master's degree in educational curriculum? Or what is the requirements for a superintendent when you're talking about leading the district into the 21st century? I mean, I'm just trying to figure out what would that superintendent have to have in order to turn around the district. One of the things I was recommending was a degree in education plus curriculum.
Okay, two points, Mr. Haywood. Your first on the audit situation. Now, I know that when I first came on the board some years ago, during that time, there was a forensic audit done on the district, on our finances, and I'm sure that is still on the books somewhere. And I think with this particular audit, that will bring it up to date from where it was through this current school year. So the audit is and will be presented at a future time.
Will it be online where we can see where each dollar was spent?
If at all possible, yes. And Mr. Martin, you can talk to the revised school code of state law regarding the qualifications for a superintendent.
Basically, under state law, a superintendent has to have an administrator certificate as issued by MDE. There aren't any specific educational requirements such as a master's degree. Typically, most superintendents do. There's no requirement of a doctorate degree, though some do. The board itself could establish certain criteria that you would want to see when hiring your next superintendent, including experience with respect to recruiting teachers, turning around troubled districts, financial accountability, those types of things. But the revised school code doesn't require any specific level of education, such as a master's or a doctorate degree.
So to answer your question, Mr. Haywood, no, there isn't a master's degree required by state law, but that could be a board requirement.
You know, the reason I say that is because without the head is generally how the body functions, and in order to make the moves and adjustments, in order to turn this district around and have the people have the trust in the superintendent, they have to be able to bring certain qualifications to the table and have previous experience in moving districts forward. I say that because we're in some very trying times, and in my previous experience through being recent, there's been individuals with certain qualifications, you know, and I have documentation that have been denied, you know, these positions, and I was trying to figure out what is it that, why would they not want to have someone with a master's degree in order to move us in a straightforward direction when it comes to education and curriculum?
Let me just finally say that throughout my 34-year career here at Ben Harbor Schools, and I've worked for 10 different superintendents, all of them had at least a master's degree. So I'm saying that the Board of Education will probably include that in any future attempt to hire a superintendent.
And just one thing, Mr. Hayward, so the benchmarks for academic, we did adjust those within the partnership agreement. We were very ambitious. We had a team that was, that included MDE staff and our team when we had the partnership agreement to make those benchmarks. So this time we really looked at the data and our trend data to determine our benchmarks. And the benchmarks that we've set were based on the two-year trend on MSTEP data, and then also on our NWEA growth target data, which is very approachable and doable for our district moving forward. And it's 4 years.
Yeah, I would hope that we will keep the data in-house and not let nobody else dictate. You remember the last time we asked about the data, and then the lady from the state came with and gave a meeting and see if she had a different data and couldn't present it. So we have to definitely make sure that that data is kept in-house where we can keep correct records, and we have to bring in a firm to keep up with that data, because sometimes the numbers can change if others created the data. So that was one of the issues that we faced when it came to that data and keeping those correct numbers.
Good.
That's
And,
what that's about.
there's been one other question from the audience about whether this plan will be on our website. And I think after the board determines whether or not that we're going to accept this plan and it's sent, that we can certainly put it on the website. So it will be on the website. All of what you just heard. Any other questions? Mr.
Representative Pinkney. My question, I overheard you say something about the millage you proposing.
It's a bond, so I'll let the attorney speak too, because it's like a bond that hasn't been used in the state of Michigan for schools. So we would be like the first to do so right now.
Yeah, and I apologize because I'm not one of our finance attorneys, so I don't know all of the particular details. But it's a debt elimination bond, which would allow you to go out and bond for the 1 mil that is being proposed for the specific purpose of eliminating the debt. And it would be based upon that millage. So that millage wouldn't be coming out of your general operating fund. So rather than paying down the debt through your general operating fund, you would be paying down the debt via this debt elimination bond. And that would allow you to use those funds that are currently being spent on the debt elimination to hire new teachers and have those improvements in the classroom.
And I think bottom line, Mr. Pinkney, is that, yes, we're going to have to ask the public for some help in this plan. The taxpayers hopefully will step up and see that the district is trying to turn around, and that $100 on a $100,000 house, they will be able to absorb. But we can't get out of this by ourselves. We've tried and we've tried and we've tried. So hopefully our taxpayers will say, we're going to do something to help.
Let me say this also. Do you have a plan, just in case they reject this bond?
Public?
Yeah, just in case the public reject this bond. It's a strong possibility
Well,
the public probably will reject this bond.
right, so we continue to do like we've been doing before, right? So if you look at the FTE dollars, it's around $7,800 per kid. All right, so we're taking out of that $7,800 per student, we're taking $700 to pay off debt right now. So we would just have to continue to do that, and we pose the risk by law, by being a deficit district, right? I mean, the governor could always ask the treasury to call in and say, hey, go down there, do your audit, and then say there's a financial emergency in Ben Harbor area schools. So we don't want to face that. We're asking them for monetary help to help us, but they're saying the state legislation is saying that unless it's a year plan with very hard benchmarks, we're not giving you anything. And so that's why we had to say, how do we be strategic and say, well, if we try to do something, can you do something as well? So that's where we said, let's do a 50-50. We can still ask them to do 100%.
One other question. What if, instead of talking about bond and millage, you have this loan refinance?
We're doing that right now, so
And have it extended for about 20 years back to give us the cushion that we need.
So I asked the state treasurer at a meeting, I don't know, 3 weeks back in Lansing. I says, hey, why don't you forgive the debt or suspend the debt or the payment of loans, right, for X amount of time, right? So say, for instance, if they did that, then we can put some money back in the coffers. She said, nope. And then I said, well, why don't we go from 2% interest rate to zeros? No, you're low enough, right? Well, why don't you suspend the interest? No. So we've asked, and it's up to them to say yay or nay, but all we can do is ask. So right now we have to figure out a different way.
What if the governor rejects the plan?
That's a good question. I think that this is just my opinion. I don't think she will reject the whole plan, because what's happening on the flip side is that the governor has recommended mediation so that we can figure out the appropriate plan together. So before we brought in a mediator, we wanted to deliver the plan, and then we can go through mediation. And so myself and Mr. Mitchell, the other day, we were talking about co-mediators, because she recommended a ex-superintendent from Grand Rapids that turned around Grand Rapids School. She's an African-American, she's retired. And we said, you know what, but we want a placeholder, right? We didn't just want to take someone just recommended from the state. So we looked out at a guy called Dr. Wesley Watson out of, he was the president for Chicago State University. He was the chancellor of all of the colleges in Chicago. I mean, great resume. So we want him to be a mentor on our side. So I don't think the governor will push back too much like you think. I think that we start mediation and just, give or take in our plan.
Also, I really think she wants you to be successful.
Correct.
Especially at this time, because this is a legacy coming up right now.
Correct.
But here's something else. What are you doing to attract the students back? The school is, you're only 30 days away from school starting again, so.
No, you're right, Reverend, and that was the hardship about what they did, right? So when they put things out in the news saying we're gonna close your high school and everything, that was a detriment to this district. They hurt us, right? And so now we gotta bounce back from the hurt, and I'll let interim superintendent speak on that, because she can tell you about what's the plan right now for recruitment.
Yes, we do have to bounce back from the hurt. So one of the things that we are planning is a student fair. And we're still working on the dates for that. But the goal of that is to let parents know that we are still in the running business of operating a district. We do want the children to come back to Benton Harbor. We are pushing that our schools will be safe. We will have an environment that is conducive to learning. We are pushing the message that our student handbook is going to be in operation K-12 day 1, just as Mr. Mitchell said. We are protecting those students who want to learn, the parents who are going to be involved, we're protecting those parents as well. We will also have a recruitment team that's going to start the end of July, going out to different apartment complexes and talking to parents, talking to families, encouraging them to come back to the district if they're not in the district. Those who are in the district, we're encouraging them to stay, to ride us through with us, and that in the end, this will be a viable district where people will want to come in. They'll have applications. We'll probably have a waiting list. But there's a bigger picture that we need to look at the end of these 4 years. This is going to be a district of greatness. And so that is a message that we're pushing out. We're also pushing out the message that our district, Ben Harbor area schools, is stronger and is better when everybody is together with this. That's the community, the parents, the teachers, and the district leadership, the school board. Once we do that and we come together with this, it's a message of positivity that parents want to be a part of and hopefully have their students be a part of.
One last thing. Teachers. It's my understanding that you might be 25 to 30 teachers short. How are we going to address that?
So my team has just, I think I mentioned to the board last week that we were going to have a job fair. And so the team is pushing forward with that mini job fair. Actually, there's 2 dates that are on the table now. We received information from the Teachers of Tomorrow that gave us a list of about 500 teachers who have their certification. We've reached out to them, letting them know the dates of that job fair, and also to invite them there. So we're hoping to get a bunch of applicants from that and also to come to our district to see our district.
And I think what everyone in the audience always has to think about is that being in an urban school district, a district predominantly African American, it's harder to get teachers, right? Because the whole United States has a teacher shortage. And not only is this an urban district, but we lack the pay scale, right? So our pay scale is not up to snuff like a Lakeshore, St. Joe, or Berrien Springs. So if I'm an individual looking for a job and you're going to pay me, say, 10 grand more, I'd probably go elsewhere, right? And so that's why we really need the governor, the treasury, whomever, philanthropy, someone to help us, right, with raising the teacher salary so that we can recruit bona fide and certified teachers.
We're not Mr. Triplett.
Good evening. One thing that I wanted to ask, and I was looking at the plan, it has, it sounds good. It sounds like something that you could really work with if all partners are integral. And I really think that, as Ms. Robinson said, the community, the board, there's a lot of healing that has to take place in this community. But there's one thing that I think that you all need to be aware of, because when you got the benchmarks from the Michigan Department of Education, or, you know, everybody talks about the financial aspect, but this is an educational institution. And education has to be the #1 priority. And I know from personal experience, the accountability piece as it relates to the Michigan Department of Education, it definitely needs to be monitored. We need to look at those individuals who have come down here from the Michigan Department of Education, and they need to present, as Mr. Hazel was saying, anybody monitoring, we talk about auditing for money, but has anybody truly audited what they have actually done? And if you look at all of the money that they have received, you know, right now, everybody knows that our district is going through, we got people coming in to present all kinds of programs to get money for their program. That's a critical piece. And a lot of people here in this district and in the community, and there are administrators and folks who knew that this stuff was not right. And so it's important, I think, that before you go into this agreement, because it's a leverage for you, they need to put in those reports of the work that they actually said that they did for the last 4 or 5 years. from the Michigan Department of Education.
That's right.
And if they did not do the work that they were paid for, that needs to be eliminated from our debt. And you cannot just keep on going into partnership with people and individuals and institutions that are not integral. I'm talking from an educational standpoint. I'm talking about things that I witnessed. It's no longer, many of us are blamed for things that they did because they were not integral. And we still have people, we have to identify those people who are not here for the best interest of our students and our children.
No.
People take this word turnaround, and nobody ever knows what turnaround is. That's just the stuff they made so they can make some money. Because if they were turning things around, we wouldn't be the 47th state in the union in education. If we were turning things around and really honestly were serious about this and knew how to really do this, our special education division in the state of Michigan would not be at the bottom.
All right.
Just because people come in here and say things does not mean that it is so. Everybody can present a great presentation, but can they carry through? And even some of the paperwork and presentation that they presented was not up to snuff. And so, to Ms. Robinson, I know this is a very tough time to be sitting in that seat. Very difficult time to be sitting in that seat, and especially with many of us knowing really what we dealt with. But I want to say from when we talk about our students, people are so quick, it's like everybody just talk about the gangs or the horrible, the bad things about our kids. But we have to address the fact that we have had cohorts of students that have not had certified math teachers from 8th, 9th, 10th, and 11th grade that are taking these tests. This has absolutely nothing to do with the ability of our students. And it has everything to do with our students not ever being presented the material.
Right.
And so we're so quick to say that our kids can't do this and our kids can't do that, but they can. And so we need to seriously look at this data. If we're going to be serious about it, if we're going to be serious from the educational component as relates to the Board of Education, we got to look at these trends, we got to look at these patterns, and we got to really do some serious work as it relates to gap analysis and how to close these gaps and to put into place those things that our kids need to bring them up to par. But if we continue to just allow people to come in here bull-jiving us, and that's exactly what they're doing. We got to hold it. It's not about us being friends.
All right now.
But this is about we're bringing our kids. My sisters have served on this board for years, and my family's been really just pressed all the way through and said our kids can here regardless. Is very nervous about her son coming to this her grandson coming to this high school in the 9th grade. And he's nervous because of all the things that are being said. And he has suffered the same thing from 5th grade, 6th grade, 7th grade with substitute teachers. So you guys have really honestly got to look at this because you're not going to be able to meet these benchmarks if you don't take a critical look at that information and put a plan in place on top of a contingency plan as it relates to education. You can't do it the same way. You got to be creative. And so when you look at the academic piece, and I hope that you all, that we do get an opportunity to look at this plan that they're submitting. Because there are some suggestions and there are some recommendations and there are some quick fixes and there are some quick wins that can happen. But we cannot have people in here sneaking and moving around and dismantling things that we're working so hard to do. So I encourage you that the plan sounds, just from sitting here, I'm like, okay, this right here is great. But are we going to be able to do these things? Are we willing to have those hard, serious conversations? Are we willing to apologize and heal and go forward? It's not talking about coming back trying to get no job, no position, but just really, there are some of us, or there are some people that really went to school for education. And what this has become is taking education and knocked it out of the road. Our kids deserve that.
Yes.
And so,
Yes.
who's responsible? Who's accountable? when you guys go behind those closed doors, y'all gotta talk. And then y'all gotta share with us in this community. That, you know, the things that we really need to know, that you're privy to. Because nobody wants to send their kids to school on the first day of school, and there's a substitute teacher sitting in that classroom.
Right.
So what are we gonna do? Are we gonna take all the first grade teachers and put them together, put them and give us a couple of weeks? We just all type of ideas and things so we can go forward, and when they come in, they can feel like they're moving forward. You know, what kind of testing, what have you, Mr. Robinson, do we have that our teacher created examinations to say, what are the prerequisites? What is everything that a student needs to know prior to coming to Algebra 9? Do you all have those kind of things? Do you have teachers? I know you have the data and the information. You know, when they come in, the first 2 weeks is our testing. We're testing our kids for ourselves, not on what the state test is saying, not on what this test is saying. We're finding out this information for ourselves. So that's one piece that I would like to say to you all, in all sincerity. It's an excellent plan, and it looks good on paper, but it's gonna take a lot of work, and the benchmark has to start with the freshman class. And it goes in 4 years, and you will know, you will be able to see that kind of growth. So that's my only concern, and what I have, what type of plan do you all have that will be in alignment with what they said from the academic component. And Michigan Department of Education individuals we need that information, and we need that ASAP. And they need to be held accountable. If they're not doing it, they don't need to be here.
Mr. Triplett, thank you for your comments. I think this, by this board meeting tonight, and the fact that we involved you all in this plan, this is the first step that hasn't happened in this district in a long time. You talk about behind closed doors. I know exactly what you mean, but this is this new board's policy to share with you all in the community. And all of the planning that is taking place, we know exactly what you're talking about. And that's the charge of the superintendent. That is her and her team's job to formulate and to bring forward. This board has only one employee, and that's the superintendent. And we have only one job to do, and that is to formulate and enforce policies. All other things falls under the superintendent and her management team. And so what we're saying is moving forward, everybody's going to be held accountable. Everybody's going to be held accountable. And you, the public, hold us accountable. So if you see that we're not doing our jobs, then at election time, you know what to do. But I think that you have to give us an opportunity, because historically, there's been some bad things that have happened in this district. But right now, you have 7 members that want to correct that. And by all indications, we have a community behind us telling us what they want for their kids and their community. And we're going to see if we can deliver. And if we can't, then it's time for us to move on. But we're certainly going to try. Yes, sir.
I have a follow-up comment and question to the gentleman. Getting resources from the Michigan Department of Education and being disappointed is not a new phenomenon in Michigan. Just ask anyone from the Detroit area. But the question is every board member and the new superintendent familiar with the new educational law every student succeeds at? That's a question. Are you familiar with?
We don't answer questions on the floor like that.
Okay, well.
Because we're talking about right now the plan, right? We're not talking about, are we familiar with the new guidelines of the state?
The reason that's significant is that there's some new tools and resources in the new law that have yet to be implemented in Michigan that will help you. One of them is a new program from the federal government called paid for success. In other words, when someone comes in and makes a promise and they don't deliver, you no longer have to pay them. In other words, if they set a level of performance that's mutually agreed and they don't make it, you don't pay. You only pay when your kids are moving toward parity with St. Joseph. Second question I have is, what impact will the Attorney General's decision that the governor does not have the authority to close schools anywhere in Michigan, including here, have on your thinking and your plans? Thank you.
Dan?
I'm not sure what impact it's gonna have on your decision. While the governor doesn't have the authority to shut down the schools, it's quite possible that the state legislature will enact new changes to the legislation that would give the Michigan Department of Education that kind of authority. So the idea that we have right now, and we've discussed this before, we had a 5-year cooperative agreement with the Michigan Department of Education. The state legislature came along and eliminated the office of the school reform officer, and thereby impacted that agreement. The governor doesn't have the ability to end that agreement. That was an agreement that was in place. So there's 4 years. We have difficult financial situation that will likely require the state's assistance, Treasury's assistance, to help this district eliminate the debt. Without an agreement with the state whereby the state will forgive some of that debt, you're still going to be $11.5 to $17 million in debt and struggling and dealing with that. What happens oftentimes in school reform situations is that the solutions create new problems. For example, the solution to address the achievement gap with students has resulted in school reforms of things such as charter schools and schools of choice. That has resulted in a number of students from within Benton Harbor going elsewhere, which has resulted in you losing those students, not only their foundation allowance, but their test scores. Those kids who could afford transportation to go elsewhere have done so. It's not clear how that's helped their achievement, but has significantly harmed the district to the tune of $16 to $22 million a year. We understand from the board's perspective that some type of agreement with the state is likely going to be necessary to address that debt. And so that's why, even though the governor doesn't have the legal authority to shut you down, and that the state school reform office no longer exists, just as easily as the legislature made that disappear and impaired your remaining 4 years on your contract, the legislature could enact something else that could allow somebody to come in here and shut you down. If you've got a contract in place, there are provisions in the state constitution and the federal constitution that basically say that the state legislature cannot enact a law that will impair your contracts. That's what we're relying on, is that constitution. And so we're wanting to have at least 4 years. It's ultimately up to you to decide what route you want to take, whether you would want to seek another 4 or longer year agreement, or whether you would want to take some other kind of legal action.
Yeah, thank you. Any other questions?
It's true that the governor cannot come here and shut the school down, but is it possible that she could send in an emergency manager to take control of the school? I don't know the answer. I'm just asking.
I would say that, and I have the attorney here to correct me if I'm wrong, but I would say that if there is a financial emergency, that could dictate her doing so.
Absolutely, that's what I'm thinking. So I believe that, that she has other ways of neutralizing us here, So that's why we gotta be on point to make sure we cross every T and dot every I, because it's important that we do this, because she got a lot of tools in her toolbox, and she can use them if we're not doing what we need to do.
And that's exactly why the board did not want to alienate ourselves from the governor's office.
Yeah.
just for those reasons. And I think after meeting with her, she did seem to be legitimately concerned about Ben Harbor schools. And until she shows us differently, I'll give her the benefit of the doubt of trying to work with us. All right, that's the last question.
Mr. Mitchell?
Thanks. I think this is a strong plan and I support it. I have, my only concern, again, like other people have spoken, is about the retaining the certified teachers and replacing the long-term subs with certified teachers. I feel that we, as the, paragraph before that says, staffing is affected by the national teacher shortage, state of Michigan trends, etc. I think we should take that part and we should say that this should somehow, our goal of, 60% replacing all these long-term subs, I think that's extremely ambitious. I think that I believe Superintendent Robinson that these math and reading scores are achievable over the 4-year period. I think there's so many unknowns. It depends on how many teachers there are, what happens to the economy, etc. I would like it if, before we give this to the governor, we add some comment that says this is like modified or adjusted if, depending upon the statewide percentage of long-term, because we're not many school districts have long-term subs. So I think we should just have a phrase in there that says that it gets adjusted, because if the economy should get worse or something, and all of a sudden we have more of a teacher shortage, then I would just hate to put something in our plan that gives them room.
All right, thank you, Ms. Rush. Duly noted, Dan. You can add that to that
Yes.
section before it's submitted. Okay. So we'll close the area on public comments. Mr. Taylor, do you have a proposed motion?
Yes, I have a motion. So I have a motion to adopt the draft proposal to send to the Michigan Department of Education, Michigan Department of Treasury, and the Governor's Office.
It's been moved. Second by Ms. Buchanan.
And just for clarification, is that as modified by Dr. Rush?
Yes.
Yes, as modified by Dr. Rush.
And the inclusion, Dan, I think you said, of the co-mediator. Call the roll, please.
Mr. Mitchell,
Yes.
Mr. Taylor,
Yes.
Ms. Rush, yes. Ms. Crowner,
Yes.
Ms. Buchanan,
Yes.
Mr. Bradley, Ms. Watley Seeds.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you very much. Item 4, approval of the MHSAA membership resolution. I have a resolution that has to be passed before August 1 by the Board of Education. Responsibility for the supervision and control of said activities, and hereby accepts the Constitution and bylaws of said association and adopts its own the rules, regulations, and interpretation as minimum standards as published in the current handbook as the governing code under which said schools shall conduct its program for interscholastic athletics, and agrees to primary enforcement of said rules, regulations, interpretations, and qualifications. In addition, it is hereby agreed that schools which host or participate in the association meets and tournaments shall follow all enforced tournament policies, procedures, and schedules. This would cover Benton Harbor High School and the Arts and Communications Academy, 6 through 8. A motion to accept this resolution.
So moved.
Been moved and supported. Can you call the roll, please?
Mr. Mitchell,
Yes.
Mr. Taylor,
Yes.
Ms. Roche, yes, Ms. Crowder,
Yes.
Ms. Buchanan,
Yes.
Mr. Bradley, Ms. Watley Seeds.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Mr. President, I want to instruct you to, we need to go back to public comment because under those comments, that was the comments from the plan. So remember, we deviated, we just had the plan discussion and then public comment after.
Are there any additional comments other than those that were given the response to the governor's plan?
I would just like to say, as we move forward as a district, I would hope that, one of the things that I've always been concerned with, piggyback off what, Donna said, we have to have individuals, and it's a lot of alumni that really want to come back over the years and really look at the district with sincerity. It wasn't about the money, it was about the kids. Because in my, following of this situation, there have been a lot of individuals that have been brought in that never had the district's best interests at heart.
All right.
So we have to stay on that, we have to really
Yes.
hone in on that. And when it talks about various reasons, some of the things that they did over these years, man, it was just, hey. And so that's why I talk about that audit so much. If they make sure that everybody that did deliver for the money that they was given, it better be known. There's nobody to deliver. I mean, that's just food for thought. I'm gonna call Scotty tomorrow and I'm going to, I'm gonna do everything that I can, because like with David, it's about that debt. It is about following that money. And I truly believe that if they follow that money, they found out that it was misappropriated funds and people never delivered on money they was supposed to do. And I truly believe that. And that's just food for thought.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
I'll take about 3 minutes, that's about all, to give you an overview. All right, my name is James Beasley. I'm two Sigma research group out of Michigan. And I'd like to know we've spent 3 hours driving up here from Detroit because we're here to support you in your effort. I want to commend this board on the action you've taken in terms of putting the plan together. What we're going to share with you very quickly is something that can work within the framework of what you've already chosen to take. This plan is already researched and evidence-based. It's been proven in Michigan. And we like to have ability to work with the Ben Harbor scholars and turn it around here. So when we look at the elements that the educational policy should have, first of all, does it address your Ben Harbor academics? Does it address your Ben Harbor debt? Does the plan address your third grade reading situation? Does it address your SAT performance? Does it comply with Every Student Succeeds Act in terms of being research and evidence-based with public-private partnerships and the Pay for Success model? Does the plan transform classrooms into a 21st century blended learning environment? And does it provide your scholars with 24/7 access to take-home technology so learning can grow outside of the classroom? Is it consistent with Michigan top 10 and 10 goals? Does it work for all low-performing districts? And does a 0.25 and 0.5 growth policy turn around Michigan's education crisis? The plan that we're going to share with you will be able to do it. And once it's put in place, you're going to achieve these major goals here. First of all, you're going to be able to retain the students that you currently have because you're going to be able to get excellent academic outcomes. Secondly, it's going to encourage those students who've left the district to come back because they'll get a chance to see that your improvement is greater than the surroundings that they've gone to. And finally, it's going to give you the ability to recruit. So a quarter of a standard deviation growth for scholars, what does it do? Well, it's going to produce professional scholars for you. It's guaranteed to do that. We say our plan is on a Pay for Success model. What that basically means is if we don't produce a professional scholar, you don't pay a dollar. You get what you pay for. Right now, you're like most school districts, you're on a pay for failure model. You're paying money and you're not getting what you expect. So you sort of flip this script, put the onus on the people that's providing the services to give you what you're paying for.
And so it's gonna guarantee you results and gonna give you superior performance. It's gonna save your schools from long-term takeover. And it's also gonna be able to give you some accelerated growth here. So when we look at what we have here in terms of pay for success, this is pretty much how the model works. There's social impact investors out here who want to come in and help school districts like Ben-Harbor. You know, they want to get a result. And so what they'll do is they'll put up money to allow you to achieve that. So what this is going to do is this addresses not only your academic plans, but it also addresses your finance plans as well, because it gives you elasticity in your budgeting process. So once they make the investment, then what we'll do is work with your superintendent, leverage your title funding to make sure we can give you the inputs and the outputs that you're going to need in order to get a successful outcome. When a successful outcome is given, then we'll be able to return investors their money. So what it does is it also has the ability to use this. Ben-Harbor is really what we call a canary in a coal mine as it relates to the rest of the state. You know, the problems that you have are problems that are going on all over the state. So we had a chance last Friday to go up to the governor's office and review this plan with her senior policy advisors. And she liked the plan. She liked the plan. We've been working with the community, with Reverend Pickney and the rest of the community. We reviewed it with them, and we've got their support. Now, what the governor said is we just have to come to the school board here and get your support. And once we get your support, then it's something I think it gives us a good common ground on. Now, talking to President Mitchell, he had indicated that in August, second week in August, you guys are going to have a working session. And we have already applied to come in and do a detailed presentation so you can see what these numbers look like. We have already analyzed this school district grade by grade, and we can show you models that show you that at half a standard deviation, this is where your scholars are going to be at in relationship to all your other surrounding school districts. We'll let you know how much effort you have to put in and when you can expect to pass those scholars up in terms of academic performance. So the reason we do this is because we know it's going to close the achievement gap. And so the question we left with the government staff is that you have an opportunity to decide which side of the coin you want to be on, because we're all memories in the making. Do you want to be remembered for closing Ben-Harbor schools, or do you want to be remembered for closing the education achievement gap? So I know you're pretty tight on time here. I won't take up much more of your time.
You passed it 10 minutes.
Well, I got time to say thank you.
And you were not on the agenda. And so Mr. Mitchell politely, I think, had told you guys you can come on the agenda for, what was it? A work session for August, so.
And that's what this is just giving you an overview as to what the work session and all.
Just contact our superintendent. She'll make the time allotted that you need to do your presentation to the board.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Item 5, any discussion items? Mr. Triplett.
It's open for public comment. What does the word mean? All night and all day. When I get an opportunity to stand before you, I'm going to ask y'all. I really do. But I do want to say to you all, you know, I was looking at the newspaper and I looked at St. Joseph, and they identified a new superintendent after a thorough search and what have you. And you know, I'm just hoping seriously that from past experiences, what have you, I think we as a community are very trusting. And like just to hear Mr. Mitchell say, you know, I'm going to give it the benefit of the doubt. But I think we just have to be really, really serious about what it is that we're doing in our next move. And I'm quite sure that you all are aware of that. I just want to say to the Board of Education, there are loads of people that want to bring their kids back, but they want to have something to bring their kids back to. And I talk to people over and over and over again, and despite everything that has happened, I still love Ben-Harbor area schools, and I love Ben-Harbor. And I just want you all to know that I talk to people on a regular basis, elementary all the way to high school, and they're like, Mr. Triplett, I want to bring my baby back. but I got to be able to bring my baby back to something. And so I think, I know it's real quick and what have you, but I think we might just have to deal with the fact of what we have. You know, recruitment, we have to deal with what we have, whatever we have in the fall, just to meet my thought, and make it good for those and make sure that they have everything that they need, you know, so that we can be able to have people can have confidence. But they really want to bring their kids to Ben Harbor, and many people that even staff and you on the board, you know the dilemma. It's very difficult when you have to shop for where you're gonna send your kids to school. So y'all be encouraged and what have you, and just keep the community involved, you know, because there's some people out there we know to you, they're fighting, but it gets very difficult to defend when you don't know what the real deal is. And so y'all be encouraged. And I hope that this time we get a new superintendent that we get that care about us and really not here being shysty and they connected to no foolishness. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other discussion items the board would like to discuss?
So Mr. Triplett mentioned the superintendent piece. Have we gotten the proposal back from MASB?
Yes, we do.
And so when we get those two proposals, are we gonna have those for discussion items as well at the work session?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. In fact, the board can stop by Mr. West's office after tomorrow and pick up a copy of MASB's proposal. So that you'll have one of each that we received back.
How many received?
Two.
In-house,
No, these are companies that are outside.
oh.
Any others? Board announcements? Comments?
I have a comment. I just wanna.
No, you go.
No, ma'am. We're going to
You
order.
go.
Ms. Buchanan?
I ain't got no, I have my.
We'll take care of that.
I would like to say good afternoon, and Mr. Triplett, I always love your comments and keep coming. That shows true leadership and love. Reverend Pickney, same with you. You know, last time we were meeting over there, you could feel the love in the building. Because we do have people that care. But there's a demon in Ben Harbor running around the city. So we got to pray. Continue to pray. Please continue to pray for each other. We need each other. We can't make it alone. And it makes me feel good when I come to the board meeting and you're up here, you're not criticizing, but you want to share your ideas to help. And sometimes I pick up the paper like today. That was sad to me. So what I'm saying, we need to continue to come, and I can feel when you're sincere in what you're doing. So continue to pray and stand up for us. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Taylor?
I just want to thank everyone and for the great input tonight on the plan, and trust me, we'll be working with this plan and we'll be mediating with this plan, right? So this is just not the plan, right? This will be work on both sides, Ben Harbor Area Schools, MDE, Treasury, and of course our governor's office. And so we wanted to make sure that we definitely be respectful on all sides, as you were saying, Reverend, because we know what's at stake, right? And so we know that we get more when we work together, as our interim superintendent says, right? Versus when we oppose each other. Also, I just wanted to say that, you know, when we talk about not bringing our kids to a district, other districts, you know, the reason why they have great districts, because they believe in their districts, right? And I think what happens in urban communities, a lot of times people, they'll run to charters and everywhere else instead of believing in their district and supporting their district. So I would just say to parents and staff, continue to support your district, right? Because that's the only way you're going to make your district grow, because you will lose your district. When you don't support it and you support others, they gain the FTE money, whether they like your kid or not, and they send your kids back when they get in trouble. So understand that sometimes you think that the grass is greener on the other side, but in reality, it's not. Thank you.
Joe, you right?
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. There's no other business to take care of this evening. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and probably second. Call the roll, please.
Mr. Mitchell?
Yes.
Mr. Taylor?
Yes.
Ms. Rush, yes. Ms. Crowder?
Yes.
Ms. Buchanan?
Yeah.
Mr. Bradley? Ms. Watley Seeds?
Yes.
Motion passes. Meeting adjourned. Thank you all for coming.